Welcome to the Ripples of Change, the podcast that explores how change takes shape at the intersection of people, relationships, and systems. I talk with people who are shaping change in different ways about their work and how their presence and self-awareness shape their impact. I'm Abby Yanu, your host. As an executive coach and organizational consultant, I'm deeply curious about how we use ourselves, our gifts, and our awareness to shape conversations and the way change unfolds. And I'm very excited to discuss this with my guest, David Arrell. Welcome, David.
Abby, it's good to see you and a pleasure to be here with you in this live space of our conversation today.
Thank you. You were actually the first person I talked to about this, so I'm excited to have you back so we can have a real conversation.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to seeing how things have remained similar and how they've shifted over that time frame.
Right. So, David, you're an executive coach and you work at the intersection of leadership and career development. And in your testimonials, one of the things people say about your coaching is that you help surface what often goes unspoken. So I'm curious, when you think about your work, what are you most often helping leaders notice that they weren't yet able to name?
Well, I love we're starting right here by going right into the deep end. That's a great question. Um, I think most of us, regardless of where we are in our leadership journey, we have what I often refer to as our leading edges, where we're growing, we're learning, we're sort of leaning into what's next. And we also oftentimes holding us back, unbeknownst to us, are lagging anchors, those places where we're maybe a little more reactive. We're bringing perhaps unsophisticated early learnings that are no longer as relevant in our lives, but they're surfacing when we're under tension, when we're under stress, when we're a little bit overburdened cognitively, emotionally, relationally. And so, one of the most important aspects for any sort of executive coaching is for the conversational space, the session, the engagement to offer some spaciousness to allow those less skillful, less developed aspects or facets of our total expression, total personality to come to the surface to where this is a place where they can be simply observed, seen, expressed, which often is not what their normal work environment allows. So number one, it creates that opportunity just to sort of be more present with themselves without all of the inner regulation, questioning, message framing concerns that are, so often part of our daily work environment.
Lovely. So what you're pointing to is um, how you beautifully just allow the spaciousness and for people to not feel the pressure of either feeling observed or um, that inner regulation, just creating the space for them to show up as themselves. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And to show up as themselves with a sense of openness, with curiosity, with some gentleness, and simply in a slight shift of their stance, just less judgmental, less, oh, that's not the best way to say that. Just allow some of the more unskillful possibilities that we're often managing or regulating to be surfaced, just so we can get them out and kind of look at them, just sort of use that spatial language here to get some perspective on ourselves and the different aspects or facets of ourselves that are present that we maybe don't allow to be fully surfaced, expressed, or otherwise made visible. So that I think that's a very critical sort of first objective of any sort of coaching type dynamic is what's really going on here? What's
Mm,
underneath? What else is at play? What other perspectives have energy? What
yep.
what what's the story? What's underneath the story? And then what's underneath that? What else is going on that could be informing or shaping your perspective, your behavior, your feelings around the issue
Yep.
that's up and arisen in the moment?
When you said unskillful, the word that came to mind for me was unrehearsed. Because so often we come with we're rehearsed, we know what we're going to say, and I think what you're trying to get at is the unrehearsed response, just
Yeah,
like
and
we're trying to do here.
exactly. And one of the things that I think is a helpful frame when we're trying to grok, like what are we really doing here? Unrehearsed is one of those things that has both a pre and a trans element to them. So the unrehearsed pre element is that like stuff we're trying to repress, or that's not skillful, or that's an emotional outburst, or that's a an I didn't eat enough breakfast this morning, and so I'm short tempered, and so I'm going to react from that. That's unrehearsed that we usually try to manage and repress or otherwise channel. But there's also the trans version of unrehearsed, which is that authentic expression, that sort of that momentary, what's appropriate now statement or action or pause or eyebrow or whatever that may be. So it is unrehearsed, but it's more of the less developed, less integrated, unrehearsed parts of ourselves that are often what comes up first in coaching. But then it also is a place to allow those more spontaneous um, manifestations of what's your authentic presence and what's essentially a low risk, no risk environment to sort of practice leaning into what is the most authentic expression here, and I don't know what I'm going to say until I say it. So I can say it here in the coaching container and not have a cost that might occur if I were to say it in the boardroom with a lot of stakeholders present who may have a different reaction to that.
So you're giving them a place to practice that in the low stakes environment, as you said. So when you're coaching leaders, what tells you that someone is standing at a threshold, that something important is present but not yet voiced?
One of the things that I listen for is when a client is of two minds about something. They see it this way and they see it this way. They see it this way and they see it this way. And if you put a developmental lens on that, or a complexity lens, or some sort of lens that allows you to sort of imagine this future growth, the better version of themselves, their ideal version, one foot is crossing the threshold to that space and they can kind of see it from here. But yet there's another foot that's on this side of the threshold, or maybe the other foot is on a previous threshold and is still dragging like a developmental anchor and is kind of holding them back. So really suss out those places where they seem torn or they seem conflicted, where they have competing commitments in play, and allowing that tension between those, not rushing to a resolution or noticing there's some emotional discomfort and wanting to shift out of that, but like, where is that tension? Where is that discomfort? And can we sit with it for another breath or two or three? Can we create some more feelings or visuals or words that feels true to this perspective? And then as we shift our weight on our stance to the other one, what also feels true? And allowing the spaciousness again for these perspectives to emerge and perhaps be initially only able to be seen through one at a time, but then ideally through some ongoing conversation, dialogue, and connection to sort of allow those perspectives to shift to where they can sort of be seen simultaneously and sort of played with a little bit. What's really going on here? Where are the energies going? Where am I feeling
Yeah.
stuck? Where am I feeling inspired?
Yeah. Well, you and I like the word play, being able to play with ideas and things. And then it's really funny because when you wrote me this lovely reflection on my post, the thing that I wrote about not brushing towards a resolution and being able to sit with the discomfort. And now I'm hearing you mirror, I mean, it's your own thinking, just mirroring that back to me. Uh-huh.
Yeah, the discomfort is often where there's so much wisdom still to be gleaned. A question I often ask my clients, especially when they're starting to wiggle out of that discomfort, is I ask them just to pause and take a breath. And then what's the wisdom in the resistance here? There's always wisdom in the resistance, but let's see if we can sit with it and allow it to surface. What's the learning here that maybe we don't want to um, transcend and negate? Maybe we want to preserve and protect. What are some values that are in play here that are either being tested, they're being neglected, they're being stressed. There's maybe two values or more that are in some sort of non-alignment
Yeah.
through this particular situation. Again, remaining curious to what's below that level, and then maybe what's below that one, and then maybe what's below that one, but just staying in that discomfort for an extra pause or two.
Yeah. So I'm keeping track of a playlist here, which is play and curiosity, staying curious.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh. So, when did you realize that this was the way, going to be your way of contributing to the world?
I think I think there's some golden threads that run through my biography that are still here and shining more brightly. One is the idea that there's always opportunities to contribute some small bit of intention, effort, practice that can make things in your immediate environment just a little bit better. And not just quantifiably better, but qualitatively better. Um, and that onus is on us. What can we do to make things a little bit better? I think Mr. Rogers is famous for when things are going crazy, look for the helpers. And I think I owe my mom a little bit of credit for saying, be a helper. Don't just look for them, be a helper. And if you don't see any, start helping. Look what's right in front of you and what can you do to make things a little bit better. And you combine that with a degree of sort of agency and action bias to action, and then learning through experience of doing things less skillfully. Over time you develop some aptitudes for being more effective in your aspirations for being a helper, and that can show up in a number of dimensions. So I think there's a thread there of what can I do to make things a little bit better for in my local environment, my circle of care, and my locus of responsibility, and how can I do, be, or shift my presence or my actions to create more opportunities for better alignment, more in tune and resonant with the larger aspirations here. And I think we always have an opportunity to do one small thing to make it slightly better. And before I pause, I'll say, just for example, at a checkout line at a grocery store, like all of us are in probably once a week, or in line at a restaurant or a drive-through, or whatever you're doing at Starbucks for coffee, it's free to offer the person who's helping you a smile and say thank you. That's free. There's no cost to that. You can ask a little question, not just how's your day going, but oh, I like that pin on your thing, or just find some small thing you can do that is slightly quincunx to their normal experience they're having with everybody else, that adds a little bit of qualitative value to their experience. And sometimes it's simple as that gratitude with the sincere, like, meaning behind it. And other times it's a joke. Again, play and humor. My wife is a little bit nervous every time we approach a cashier because she expects I'm going to have a joke or do something that nobody sees coming. That, most of the time it goes well, and sometimes I just get a scowl, that, and that's fine too. Like that, my offer of value was not appreciated, and I totally respect that.
Yeah. It's not often that someone uses a word that I'm not familiar with. So what does quincunx mean?
Oh, it's just a slightly non-linear angle. It's I don't want to get too technical, but just as the unexpected angle. You're expecting things this way or this way, and the quincunx angle is maybe up and to your left a
Excellent.
little bit.
Yeah.
So it's just that being present to the moment and showing up appropriate for that, which is often what's not in line with normal expectations.
Uh-huh. Very good. Your story about being a helper and doing something unexpected, I'm always moved when I read stories about this. And there was a story about a doctor that had someone come in. I'm not sure if he was homeless, but he was not in good condition and he didn't have any money. And the doctor took care of him. And when the patient went out to pay, the person at the desk said, he said, what do I owe? And she said, nothing, because the doctor had offered to pay to care for him at no cost. And that just makes chills fit on my, yeah,
Hmm.
I feel chills when I heard that.
Oh, I love that story. That's a good one.
Beautiful story. Yep. So, David, when did you first notice that your work could make a difference in the world?
I think I'll share an anecdote from my past. And so after I got out of graduate school, I was working in restaurants part-time because it kept my days free to figure out what I really want to do when I grow up. And it allowed me to work in a place where I felt I didn't have to trick anybody. I worked at some nice restaurants. The salmon's great, steak's great. It's very easy to feel like I'm genuinely helping people. And in a restaurant environment, you have every table is the same, then it's different. They've got the same menu, it's the same restaurant, but every experience, every dining moment is going to be different. Is this a first date? Is it an anniversary? Is it a business meeting? Is it a breakup? I mean, there's a million things that can be going on. And I really enjoyed connecting and reading my table and then pivoting and giving them a facet of me and my offering of service to them that I felt was the best fit for them. And so a goal there was I wanted everybody who sat in my section, is at my table to leave glad they came in. And so I took that and I built a coffee chain of coffee shops out of that same mindset back in Philadelphia 20 plus years ago called Good Karma Cafe, where the entire premise of the business was that everybody who touched the business left feeling better than when they came in, whether it was a producer, a vendor, a customer, a community, employees. We were like the original B Corp before it was a thing, conscious capitalism, people, planet, profit, product, all organic, fair trade, eco-friendly materials, but also really trying to treat our employees as equal collaborators. It was always an invitation. Do you want to work here? Great. This is what it looks like. And if you don't want to work here, that's great too. If you come in and you like my coffee, that's great. If you don't, that's great too. There's a lot of other coffee shops out there, but the human component of that is the central component. When somebody walked in, the number one value for me was we treat them as the individual that they are. And if you walk in and you're small black coffee every morning with no smile, sure, I'll be polite and friendly, but I'm not going to badger you with a bunch of questions about how your day is going. But the next person comes in, they're like, David, hey, how's it going? I'm like, hey, what's up, my man? I'm high-fiving across the counter. So it's not about being a different person. It's about meeting people where they are, back to coaching, um, playing with them in a way that they value, and helping them have the best experience that's available to them that they're interested in that moment, which may be the same day to day, it may differ. But when they leave, they are ultimately they pause and they kind of smile and they recognize that they feel better than when they came in. And that's one of those golden threads that runs from my my lemonade stand when I was 5 up into my executive coaching and consulting business now is there's a very powerful motivation for me for every client, every person, everybody who bought my lemonade back in the day to my current clients to when the Zoom window closes or we shake hands at the end of an engagement for them to feel that they were taken care of as a person and they had value added to their experience.
Mhm. Sounds like there's an ongoing thread through all of your work and this motivation for people to have to leave in a better state than what they came in and to have a very positive experience. Is that right?
Ultimately, yes. That may not happen in any individual session if we get into some, deeper difficulties or challenges. But yes, the arc of history that I'm aspiring to be part of and to contribute to is one of sort of an ongoing uh, expansion of the fruits of the spirit. Ultimately, joy, love, peace, kindness, gentleness, all of the things that sort of naturally come out of a net positive 1 + 1 = 3 type of dynamic.
I'm struck by the beauty of that term, the fruits of the spirit. So beautiful. And it brings to mind, to me, a sense of healing. And I wonder how you think your work contributes to healing at any level.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I will preface my answer with I love the idea of looking at what we're doing as humans in three dimensions. And we play with this all the time. With leadership, we talk about leading our team, leading across, and leading up. We talk about leadership qualities of character, culture, capacity. And when we look at healing, I look at healing as one of three dimensions in play: healing, growth, and depth. So you can kind of look, healing often has that sort of anchors to the past component, remembering, reconnecting. Growth has that more future developmental element, and depth, as always and only, is to be found in the present. And so with healing, as we talked about initially here on the call, all of us have these reactive patterns, these old learnings, these early life lessons that we've integrated and have sort of baked into our normal operating system of day to day. And some of those aren't as helpful as others. So if you imagine getting a scratch on your hand, as long as you keep the wound clean, it will heal on its own with the natural, holotropic component of what it means to be human, growth towards wholeness. We have capacity for healing as long as you don't keep scratching the itch or have it otherwise infected. So when it comes to coaching, there's some really strong, healthy boundaries between coaching and therapy, but there is an overlap of healing because good coaching can allow some of those reactive patterns to be surfaced, and then choices can be made of what do we do about that. There's a great example I've heard of, if there's a pothole in the road, a coach will help you learn to drive around it, while a therapist will help you park the car and get out and fix the hole. So for coaching, we're more sort of future oriented inherently, but some of that does mean freeing up those developmental anchors that are holding us back. We can have all the growth aspirations, all the good intentions, values, aspirations, and energies. But if we have these anchors holding us back, we can aspire to go forward. We can try to make these new practices we're learning, taking these experiments, some of this play we're trying, but the anchors are going to hold us back. Ultimately, and I'll finish here, almost everything that's in the way can be connected to identifying a developmental anchor that's holding us back. And are we able to sort of wiggle it free? Do we tie some more rope on the end of it so we can keep going and without it holding us back? How do we want to play with this awareness? And what are some choices we can make in that awareness? So yeah, health is a big part of coaching, just in slightly different dimensions and dynamics than it would be in therapy.
Hmm. You've talked a lot about how you bring your own self to, greeting the customer in the coffee shop with a, hi, how are you doing today? And sort of your smile and your spirit, um, and being able to bring yourself to this place of healing, helping other people heal. So you and I often talk about being an instrument of change, how we
Hmm.
use ourselves to make an impact. Can you talk about how you use your presence and your self-awareness to create the world that you're trying to create?
Yeah, I love that. And I love your use of the word instrument in there. I've been playing a lot recently with the musical metaphors of attunement, of the sort of vibrational metaphors of alignment, resonance, harmony, both internally. Are we in tune? Are our actions in tune with our values? And are perhaps our actions need to change? Perhaps our values need to be updated. Are those actions over time in alignment towards our vision, towards our virtues? Is this the kind of action that could be translated out of music into gardening, that would be cultivating the soil out of which the fruits of the spirit can emerge? And so in practice, I think there's value to clarifying my own intention and attention prior to engaging in any sort of conversation or call, and asking myself, am I in tune? Like a bit like if a musician gets on stage and they're messing with their guitar strings, is each one in tune? And then they maybe do a couple practice songs together. Are all four instruments in alignment? Are we playing the same song? Are we playing at the same pace? Are we playing the same playlist? And I think there's a lot of ways that all of us can over time doing some exercises clarify our inner alignment and attunement with our own values and vision, and appreciate that wherever we're out of alignment with ourselves is ultimately going to impact our ability to resonate and harmonize with the client. If you clicking back to, if my guitar is out of tune, how much can I contribute to that higher octave performance of an ensemble? Or if I'm out of tune, how much am I going to be sort of inherently acting as drag or drift on the performance of the whole? So I think there's a lot of value in appreciating ourselves as an instrument and doing the work, both pre-session but over time, to make sure we're showing up as in tune, in align, as internally harmonized with our different selves, our own work, our own shadow and light, so that when we do show up in session, whether it's with a bright smile or a more calm gravitas or whatever the moment requires and fits our personality, most importantly, we're in inner harmony with ourself and our intention and our aspiration for what's our way of showing up in the world, what's the work we're doing, what's the value proposition we're offering, so that our clients can feel into that. And whether that works for them or not, again, if you like the coffee, great. If you don't, that's great too. Understanding we're not going to be the best fit for everybody, but for the people that we are a good fit for, that's the beginning of the values exploration that can emerge.
Hmm. What resonates for me in that is, of course, attunement, because my newsletter is called Staying Attuned. So
Hmm.
you and I share that interest very much. And what you're pointing to is that personal development and leadership development is both internal within ourselves, being in inner harmony with ourselves, and also being aligned and attuned to people, groups, the people we work with.
Exactly. And I think that there's it's worth spending a moment here clarifying that for leaders in particular, leaders aren't sitting on a Zafu all day by themselves. Leaders are in context. They are at work. They're in the boardroom. They're leading, shareholder discussions. They're leading teams. They're leading organizations. They are present in both quantitative and qualitative ways that can be exponentially their impact can be exponentially amplified by how their presence manifests in the places that they're going to be present. So, with leaders in particular, there's value in appreciating that leadership isn't just attunement, um, and it isn't just alignment, but it's also discernment and wisdom. It's where does the rubber hit the road? Decisions need to be made in the real world, Abby, as you and I both know. Judgment needs to be exercised. Not everything is to be tolerated um, and celebrated. If you're back to the gardening metaphor, if you want healthy tomatoes, then you need to have less caterpillars. If you want to have a more productive vineyard, you need less weeds. There's a lot of reasons and places where leaders not only need to have a larger circle of care and compassion that they're connected to, but they also have to have that larger perspective and discerning wisdom to appreciate that sometimes for a great band to succeed, that some players need to be asked to go play someplace else, and maybe they're not contributing the proper notes to this band. So I think that's a challenge that is sometimes in our coaching space we come across as overly warm and fuzzy and can't we all just get along and let's build consensus and let's collaborate. And I agree with all of those things. And we need to have discernment, wisdom, execution, appreciation of outcomes. Metrics are, these are all important. And the leaders that I feel most resonate with those sort of larger goals that hold that both and care and results, wisdom and compassion are the places where we all have a little bit of room to lean and grow, perhaps in one dimension more than the other, but holding these tensions, holding these polarities in play and looking for that both and. What's the 1+1 = 3 here that honors bottom lines and performance and merit while also honoring top line of character, value, culture, capacity. So that I think that's the real challenge for all of us as coaches these days to honor these polarities and look at that. What is that next level vision that transcends and includes the values of these two polarities, but also leaves the downsides someplace else.
Hmm. I really appreciate your pointing out the both and also putting coaching into context because hopefully we're not just, I want to say just doing it for the sake of, um, well, it could be feeling better about yourself, but as a leader, you are responsible for decisions and outcomes. And so we're
Hmm.
holding both of those. And you're saying, coaching, which may be seen as just one of the inner self. No, no, no. It's actually connected to the outcomes as well. That's great. So, as we wrap up and as you begin to reflect on this conversation, what feels most important to you to leave our listeners with?
I think something that I think is important to appreciate is the value of meeting all of our clients where they are and along where they are along all these different dimensions of where are they personally when it comes to performance versus presence, where are they personally when it comes to attunement versus action, where are they in these different dimensions, and simply validating that place of where they are is okay, and we're happy to meet them there, and then we can offer support and encouragement, support and challenge from where their growth aspirations are. The best thing that one of my most powerful realizations as a coach a while back is that at first I was terrified when I realized I didn't know what the right answer was for each client because I felt that was my job on some hand. And then I was so relieved. Like, how could I possibly know what the next perfect growth stimulus liberating action is for each client, like some sort of magic map of knowledge? So it's really about being present and engaged and trusting, much like the scratch I mentioned earlier will heal on its own with neglecting to interfere with it while also allowing the proper conditions for it, or the fruits of the spirit will emerge naturally as long as there's not too many weeds and caterpillars inhibiting them and they're getting the right sunlight and water and fertilizer or nourishment through the soil. That's kind of our job as a coach, is to sort of like track these different dynamics and offer that support, offer that challenge. And it starts by not pointing to where you think the client should be over here, but to meeting them where they are and opening up that aperture of the present to allow more to exist in the moment. And from that, I think the future is unlimited.
Hmm. I'm leaving with an image of a gardener cultivating the soil and enabling the fruits of the spirit to emerge.
Hmm. That's what I'm envisioning too, and I'm also envisioning us with our little gardener's hats on, out there, doing the work. It's like back to Voltaire in his famous dictate of just tend your own garden, and that's what all of us are doing as coaches. Our clients, our relationships, our partners, our children, our parents, our friends. Our garden. We are standing wherever you are. You are standing in the middle of your garden. How can you tend your own garden? How can you cultivate your own garden? How can you look for helpers? And how can you be a helper, perhaps?
I love that image, David. Thank you so much for bringing your presence to this conversation. I really appreciate how we explored this together.
Me too, Abby. I always love connecting with you. I never know where the conversation is going to go, and I always leave feeling better than when I started. So I think we're full alignment there.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. Thank you so much, David. Let me turn this off.